Before I deep dive into the session, I just want to introduce myself. I am Vivek, software developer. I started my career as a software developer at IBM quite like 15 years back, and then did some DevOps in enterprise and in startup. And also, I had my own startup and worked with many startups and developers at DigitalOcean, helping developers in terms of understanding cloud and building product right. um, and currently I'm working at Microsoft as a senior developer product marketing manager, work helping developers and empowering developers to build amazing products, right? And that's my background, that's me. And just I just want to I don't want to define what is cloud and other things, and the definitions are available out there, and you can go back and check the definitions, and you can read about it. But my main interest in today's session is to give you a background of how the evolution happened of an application development, in fact. So 15 years back, I'll just go back to my IBM days. Everything was on premises, how we were doing it, and we had so many questions to answer, right? Like how many servers we need to procure, and what about the power outrages? How do we manage these power outrages? Who's going to access these physical access to the server? So there was a room, just like how Rohit was freezing, we were also freezing going into that room and wearing some jackets and other things, because that room has to be maintained at some temperature. And there were what happens when a server fails. Who's going to again bring back the servers? And what happens if it goes down at midnight and nobody is there at the server location, right? So these were the questions, right, when on-premises development were happening at that time. And then came a revolution, infrastructure as a service, which is up on a public cloud. I moved from an on-premises to a public cloud. Obviously, there were some questions to be answered. If you see that, right, I was not discussing about how do we back up my server. Instead, I was talking about how often I should do the backups, and how do I package my server. So, how do I patch it and other stuff, and which is very much required. And if you see the and also I need to understand the size of the server, and understanding how I should scale my app and everything. But still there were difficulties in managing applications, right? That is from an infrastructure as a service perspective. And when I move into past layer, most of the questions were answered. I was only focusing on how do I scale my applications, how do I make sure I'm utilizing these services, and how do I build right set of business model, right? And I'm not really worried about uh, patching my services. I'm not really worried about patching my infrastructure, in fact, sorry. I'm not really worried about which OS and patching OSs. And I'm not it's more and more easier to manage your applications, and you're focusing on your business model, right? But still there were questions, right? Like how do I scale my applications? How do I make sure it is always available, and utilization of these servers? And then came a real evolution, which is serverless. I'm only focusing on on the code, and I'm not really focused on plumbing it, right? So how do I architect my app? That's the only question I'm answering when I'm using the serverless, because reliability, security, performance, scalability, elasticity, everything is provided by the cloud provider here. And that's the advantage of using serverless. And we're going to go deep dive into serverless in my next session, which is happening on February 27th, I believe. Um, but keep in mind, this was the evolution from an on-premises 15 years back, while I was on on-premises, and today most of the apps we build is going on serverless and microservices via serverless, right? So this is the evolution of of cloud. And to simplify cloud, right? And what are the three things I've always seen, in this industry as well, is that I need to understand the compute, the things you do, which is the RAM and the CPU you use, and then the storage, the databases, the file storage, the object storage, which you need different kinds of storages, which you need for different kinds of application requirements, right? And then there is a network where, especially from the access to your application, and also connecting all these services together. So these are the only three things which are very much required, which is compute, storage, and network. Even when you are choosing a laptop, you would see these are the things, right? You will go and check RAM. You're going to go and check, if you're buying a laptop, right? RAM, and and the CPU and the storage you require, and other things. So similarly, even if you're spinning up something in cloud, you would check all these compute and storage and everything. So uh, these are the only three things which you need to keep in mind: understanding the network topology, network in cloud, understanding the storage, how we want to store it, and understanding the compute. So these are the main focus areas if you're building an application in cloud. And from I don't want to talk about benefits of cloud computing. It's already known, right? It is obviously cost effective, it's scale, it's secure, and it is reliable. It's always up to date because you're not worried about patching your OSs and other things, which it's more and more becoming more and more developer friendly than administrators who managing it, right? um, from a from a developer perspective, how exactly Azure fits in. So Azure is a public cloud, and where I talked about infrastructure as a service, that's where Azure comes in. From a developer perspective, what exactly Azure provides to the developers. So one is functions, which is nothing but a simple piece of code which you can run. You're only focused on building a code in any of your programming languages, and you're not really looking at different programming languages or different structure. You're only focused on code. Python, you build something on Python. Go language, you're focusing on Go language, and you're deploying that onto Azure Functions. And this is specifically from building your application, and people accessing these applications via the URLs, right? So functions are pretty simple piece of code, and it's pretty easier to build and manage. You really don't have to learn new technologies there. You already know how to build up an applications, and just deploying that code into a function is what helps you to build it. And then there is logic apps, which is nothing but designing your workflow and orchestrating processes. So when I say designing your workflow, is because while functions do one specific activity, logic apps actually connects different activities together into one specific activity. So it can be a third party integrations or an inbuilt function integrations. So any kind of integrations can be managed via logic apps, which is one of the best way to design your triggers and other things while you're building an application. So simple example could be, you and our friends go into a party, and you come back and you request for a payment from different people, and you have a logic app to one specific function to um, you know and one to figure out who has to pay how much, and the other set of function is to request for payments. So all these can be logically connected, and you can build an application out of that and run these logic apps together. So that's one of the example. And event grid is to manage these events and triggers, and so that the requests are not lost. And even when there is a lot of requests coming into these applications, the responses are met. So that is what event grid is all about. And from a platform perspective, Azure provides lots of services. From a database perspective, the NoSQL and SQL services, storage services, different storages, file storages, object storages, and then there is security, and then different kinds of security at a different levels of part of the application deployments. And then there is IoT, various products around IoT, and then there is analytics, and then there is intelligent systems, which has been built from a cognitive service perspective. So this is from a platform perspective. As a developer, you use IDEs, right? And as a developer, you are using Visual Studios, and Visual Studio is basically to build to build your code, and also integrate that code into different extensions, and deploy it into different services. Visual Studio provides various extensions for connecting your DevOps, for monitoring, for debugging your code, and also local deployments, and deploying it to cloud directly from your Visual Studio, right? So this is from a developer's environment perspective. So there are two things. One is developer environment using the Visual Studio, and then there is a platform, mainly from a developer perspective, it's functions and logic apps, and event grids to connect everything. And there are a lot of services which is there, which is from a database, storage, security, IoT analytics, and intelligent systems. So this is overall view of a developer's perspective. As a developer, what you can pick and choose, and what you can how you can use Azure. And to start your learning, right? I mean, if you want to learn more about Azure, and if you want to understand different products like Visual Studio and other things, you just have to start with docs.com. You go to docs.com, and you find a lot of help in terms of understanding your application. And this is open source, by the way. Docs.com is an open source, it's on GitHub. And you can provide feedback directly, and you can also contribute, by the way. If you feel there is some issue with the documentation there, you can do a pull request, and these pull requests gets accepted. And it's basically one of the largest open source project which is on GitHub today. So I invite everyone from the community to go and learn, contribute back via the open source projects. And for Azure specific things, if you want to learn something on Azure, just go to docs.microsoft.com/Azure, and you will find different areas of learning. Is that it is compute, or the networking, or the storages. You can learn different technologies. In fact, we don't. It doesn't start with Azure specific things. It also has a concepts. So understanding these concepts are very important. After understanding concepts, how to do it on cloud, and how to use public cloud to do it, you will be able to understand that via these documentations. So just to give you an hands-on, right, the challenge, right? So if you're free now, just go to dots.com, and just go and find serverless documentation for your language specific. Like, if you feel you like Python, or you like Java, just go and see if you can find it. It's out there. So it's just a simple challenge. While talking about challenge, I think Rohit already mentioned, we are running Azure Dev Challenge. You just need to go to challenge.confab.com, and you'll find the way to build your career as well. It's just learning Azure, and building on Azure, and just not just building on Azure, you giving back to the community by contributing as a creator via blog and videos, and whatever you have learned and whatever you have built, and get certified. That's the agenda here, so that you understand cloud in and out, and also be notified as a expert in that area. So go ahead and focus on the Azure Dev challenge, and see how you can complete those challenges, and learn stuff and contribute as a blogger. So Microsoft Learn is free, by the way, and if you go to microsoft.com/learn, you will find a lot of good tutorials. Um, there are coding examples, and there are quizzes, and you can also prepare for certifications. So just go to microsoft.com/learn, and you will be able to learn most of these things, whichever I'm going to talk about today, and whatever I'm going to show as a demo. We'll be able to see a step-by-step tutorials if you just go and read these tutorials there. So I just want to introduce Azure Portal, how exactly it works, and other things. Before I do that, um, I want to talk about how do you set up Azure. When you create an Azure account, you'll be in this dashboard. I hope people are able to see the dashboard. This is the dashboard of Azure, and there is many things out there, right? It's quite big of an ocean, right? It has around 140 services. So not all 140 services is required by a developer, and I just want to talk about how it is all structured in Azure. So a very basic unit of Azure is a resource. So if anything you spin up, the virtual box, or a container instance, or Kubernetes services, storage, anything you spin up is called a resource. It's a simple entity, and it's called as a resource in Azure. And these resources are grouped into resource groups. So it's basically uh, a logical connectivity, logical structure, where resources are part of the resource group. And for example, in a developer environment, you're doing some microservice activity, and all these resources are part of a microservice which you are deploying, and you are calling that group as a resource group for a specific microservice and developer activity. And basically all these resources are spinned up together, can be deleted together under the resource group, right? So you're just logically grouping them. And then Azure subscription is basically called as subscription. In fact, it is part of the which covers overall resource and resource groups, and you can have many resource groups under a Azure subscription. So you can have many resources under a resource group, and under Azure subscription you can have many resource groups. So subscription is basically you're subscribing, and you're controlling the payments, you're controlling what can be deployed, and role-based accesses and everything. I'll show that as well. So before I go into deep dive into how to manage these things, how exactly this thing work is through a REST API endpoint by Azure Resource Manager. It is actually connecting to the clients. So there is three ways to connect to Azure. One is PowerShell, one is Azure Portal, and the Azure CLI. All these three are different clients where it uses REST API endpoint onto Azure Resource Manager. It sends a request to Azure Resource Manager, and then it is validating the Azure subscription, and then going and talking to resource group and resources. But while these clients are requesting for a specific activity and specific requirement, there is resource groups, resource provider, Azure Resource Provider, which is part of the Azure Resource Group, So the way the request actually grows, this is an example of how the request actually is moving from one end to another, from the client to a specific activity which is being requested onto a resource, which is could be a VM, right? Say for example, you are spinning up a new VM. How exactly it works through Azure CLI or a portal or PowerShell? You just initiate the command, and the first it goes to Azure Resource Manager, and Azure Resource Manager decides to hand over the command to VM resource provider, and then from there it verifies the subscription, and then it goes to resource group, and the resource is spinned up. So all these are connected, and this is how Azure is set up. And it's not the it's not just the way it is like this. There is Azure Active Directory as well at the start, and you can see there is a trust which has been built. So and there are a lot of tenants in the Azure Active Directory. So when I say tenants, say for example, you have one org, and within that org can be a marketing team, there can be a development team, and there's a products team which is there. So all of them have different tenants, and each one of them have their own subscriptions. So they have their own tenants, which is uh, different subscription is available for them. And within this subscription, there is a control which you can add. So I can say role-based accesses, and tenants can access through roles. And then these are the activities, policies you can create on these resources. And you can create limits. Again, you can add the limit onto it, and then you can add finance control over it. So this is the basic way to manage Azure. So to repeat, okay, you have client, and which is PowerShell, Azure Portal, or Azure CLI. And through this client you are ending sending a message to Azure Resource Manager to spin up a VM in a particular Azure subscription. These are again verified via the Azure Active Directory, and it associates a tenant based on the user, based on the person who is actually initiating these commands. It actually verifies whether this person has a role access to create a resource, or create a resource group, or do some activities on these VMs and other things. So all these things come together, and then once everything is verified, and Azure subscription is the user is part of that, and he is able to create that resource under the resource group, and take it forward. So this is how you can actually um, manage the Azure. And you can actually find more information about it in this link in docs.microsoft.com. I'll post this link on my Twitter just after this talk, so that everybody can access it and read about it and understand how exactly it works. um, Coming to portal, right? And I just want to introduce how exactly this portal is. So let me show you. Portal.azure.com, you can go and create your account. There is $200 free account is available for anyone to play around. So you can just go there and create your account to play around. And this is the portal, and this is a dashboard, and you can see there are a couple of things which you can do in this activity space. And you can go ahead and create a resource. So that is the basic thing, right? When we talked about it, you can just create a resource under different resource groups and subscription, right? So let us go ahead and create a VM, just to understand how exactly you can create a VM, and you use that VM. So here is Ubuntu service. So I'm using Portal, Azure Portal, to as a client. As an exercise, just after this session, you can go back and see how you can do it via CLI or PowerShell, and see how these activities which I'm doing, you can run it through the CLI of Azure. Okay, so the Ubuntu service, which I'm just clicking on Ubuntu. So I just went into create resource. Let me go back and just went in here, create resource. Just click on create resource. I hope you can see my screen. Let me also show you here, create resource, and you will come here and you can see Ubuntu. These are some of the popular. You can actually search if you want different services. For example, container instance, right? So you can actually search for one, and let me click on Ubuntu. So here is a subscription. This is a subscription which I have, and here is a resource group. There is no resource group as of now. I can create one, uh, saying for fundamental demo, fun demo, right? So let's do that, and we call this as fun demo as a name. You can choose different regions. There is each Central India and other regions which is available. So I'm just selecting Central US. Um, then there are a couple of options from availability options, availability zones, and other things. I don't want to go deep dive into all those because it's like we'll spend most of the time in understanding the Azure. So what I'll do is I'll give you a link where Azure fundamentals is available, not just from a developer perspective. It is from a both administrator, developer, and any non tech guy can understand the Azure. So I'll just post that link as well. Um, so availability zones and other things, and then you are choosing an image. Image is Ubuntu server. You can also choose your own images, and you're choosing a size. This is the most important thing, right? Which size you want. This is the compute you're talking about. What is the RAM, what is the CPU you're looking at. And then there is authentication type, and which SSH, how you want to log in into this server. And you can also do a password based login, and then you can pair them all and just go into inbound ports and outbound ports. Inbound port is nothing but traffic coming into the server, so you need to control that from a security perspective. And outbound ports is from the server, request going out. That is fine, unless and until you are not looking at going into any other servers and doing some activities. Um, from a disk perspective, you can see that there is OS disk type. There is different types of disk. You can do encryption at rest, data which is not moving, which is at rest. You can encrypt it. From a security perspective, you can also add new data disk to it, whether the existing ones or attach a new one. It's basically added into the virtual machine, and you can use directly. And there's a network. It's itself, virtual network itself is a big session from the perspective of administrators, but from a developer perspective, it's just a simple, it is a default settings, which is okay. And we've already seen those other things like load balancers, and which you can use. This we have already seen that. And load balancer is nothing but balancing your requests. If more number of requests coming into the server, how you want to balance it, adding more and more machines to it, or scaling it into creating new machines to manage it. So these is management tools and other things which you can take a look at it. So I don't want to go deep dive into each and every points here, because you can also shut down and backup and other things, and you can take a look at that while you are building a new virtual box, and advanced things like Cloud Init and other things. So what does Cloud Init mentions is, while spinning up a server, if you want a couple of things to be added onto the VM, you can actually mention here through a script, and that script runs just after spinning up a new server. So you can review and create a new virtual box, and once you create a new virtual box, you can just access it via SSH. So I'm not going to create a virtual machine because it takes time to create it and accessing it, and it's very easy to do it, and pretty easy for any developer to bring it up and use it. This is very basics of cloud. And I did mention how you can use Cloud Shell. In my in when I talked about the agenda and other things, and if you click on this Cloud Shell, you will be able to see we can create a shell, Cloud Shell, to access to do a lot of activities. Whether if you're spinning up a community service, or you are spinning up different services, or you are doing some activities and other things without any issues. You just need to make sure the storage is being created, and you really don't have to spin up a new VM just to use a CLI, or CLI activity, to do any kind of CLI activity. So you just need to create a storage account, which means through your subscription there is a storage resource which gets created. And once the storage resource which gets created, you'll be able to see how you can use access all these services via the CLI. And it comes inbuilt with a lot of things from Git, from it comes with inbuilt of a Docker, it comes inbuilt of Python installed. So it's very easy for you to use. You don't really have to install anything new onto this Cloud Shell. So it's just getting created. Let us wait for a minute. Yeah, so it has Azure CLI already installed. So if I type AZ, I get all the required commands for AZ, which we can run. And just a second. Okay. Um, AZ AKS help. So it will give you all the details of AKS, which is Azure Community Service, right? So it gives you all the commands which is there. So it's pretty easy. It comes with inbuilt of all these things. AZ is, the Azure CLI is one of the way to connect to the Azure Resource Manager for running any activity on the resources, right? And it's not just AZ. You can talk about Docker. Docker is pre-installed. Um, it comes with community CLI installed, which is all latest versions of these services. So this is the power of cloud, right? Which I talked about. When it comes to PaaS layer, where you really are not managing these services. You're not really installing all these services. You're just you have the flexibility of using the CLI into your inbuilt onto the cloud cloud portal itself, right? So you are just using the commands, and you're just getting started without any issues. You can even do the git, clone your code, and just deploy using app service. So it's pretty easy. So one of the challenge which I would I would like you to through the Azure Cloud Shell, how you can deploy an app using app service through CLI. Just figure out through docs.com and try and do it, and you would learn most of the things which is required from an Azure Microsoft Azure perspective. So you can just once you complete that exercise, you have learned most of the intricacies of Azure. Um, Let me go back and show you some activities, which is from creating a new app service, which is a web app. All right, so it's pretty easy. So everywhere, if you see that, right, anything you are building and creating a new resource, if you just go here and create resource and click on app service or web apps, uh, it's like you have a subscription and then there is a resource group. Let us go ahead and create a resource group, fun demo. Um, Let me do that, and then I'll just name this as fun demo. Is name is not available. Fun demo vs. I hope it's available. So it shows here if it is available or not. So the green tick mark is for that, and I'll select Docker container, and I'll select operating system as Linux, and um, you need to create a plan while you are building an app service. There is a plan, and to know more about this, right, you just click on this link and you will be able to figure out why this plan is required and what are the importance of these plans for various activities, for various different kind of manageability of your application. So I'll just create new plan, plan name fun demo. I'll just name that and change the size of the plan from our test dev environment perspective. I'll just select these things. If you put it on the production and other things, the monitoring and other things will kick off. So if you want to see production, let's uh, see what are the things which is available. So there are a lot of other, see if you can see there is various uh, pricing tier. I just don't want to go there, and I'll just say 1 GB memory, 60 minutes free. So this is free. So if you want to test out and build something, and you can just choose F1 plan and just go to next and go to the Docker tab. You select the single containers, and we will just build one quick Nginx app web app service and see how exactly you can do this. Then we'll go to monitoring, and you can enable if this is not enabled, because the plan I have chosen is a very basic one for building it. So if you choose a production one, you can easily enable an application inside, and once you have enable application inside, it gives you a lot of information about the application it is running. So the number of requests, the failures, and also you can add some kind of triggers and monitoring it into it to get information about your application. And there is tagging to track your resource. So from a billing perspective, from how these resources are used and other things, so you can figure that out here. Then we will do a validation. So it validates all the information which I have provided in the portal. So if you go and see, right, this everything is ready, and it says you can go ahead and create. It's been validated. So now I'll go and create it. While it is creating it, you can see here, download a template. So what does it mean is the template is nothing but an Azure resource manager. It gives you the structure, JSON structure, to build your services. So you can use that JSON and directly pass on to the Azure resource manager to spin up a new services. You don't have to use the portal all the time. So this is basically automating your deployments and other things. So if you want to do that, you can use those templates. While this is getting deployed, we will wait for, let us go back to create new resource. So I'll just show you. um, Now I did a web app or an app service, and you can do via code or via Docker containers. There is both support has been provided today, but you can also go back and drive container instances itself. So all these are computes. So basically I can go and create a container instance as well. And if I go and create container instance, again, it starts with visual subscription. It starts with new resources, or I can say from demo. I hope it is there, um, because we did create now. And then we just need to give a container name and quick image just for testing purpose. You can do a hello world, and see, if you see here, right, the way it's being deployed on container instance is quite different, right? Either it gets deployed via container registry, which is Azure Container Registry, or you can either deploy it via the Docker Hub, which is again a completely different technology, right? So the difference between a web app and this is either container, which I gave there, so I can reuse it, or I can come here and build it and deploy via container instance. And here I can choose the size I want. So basically you have been given the flexibility to choose a size, and just go ahead and deploy it. And it's very easy, and just select default which port you are deploying it to and other things. And then policies are available, how you want to run this as a policy. In fact, determine container should restart or not, when something has happened or not. If something container is not running, when should you restart, on failure or on different activities, right? So um, let me go back, and I won't go and tag anything. So it again verifies whether I've given the right set of information before I deployed. So I'm just going and deploying that as well. So while this is deploying, let's see whether that deployment is in progress. So container deployment is in progress. Okay, so we have done a web deployment. So let me go back here and show you. Okay, so now I opened that deployment, and you can see that it's deployed. The whatever code, which is the Nginx, uh, we wanted to deploy and see, is deployed. And if you go and click on this particular link which you're seeing, right, just click on this link or copy this link and just open it here. While this is coming up, let me also show you container instance as well. Container instance is also deployed. Here we have deployed um, through an IP. Right, so you can see it is running. Let me go back. So container is pretty fast, right? So container instance, you can see, just I typed in the IP address and I'm able to see the container up and running. And the the one which we deployed into web app service, it's taking time because it is creating that image, downloading that image, and running that image. And since it is for the first time it is deploying, it takes some time. Once it's done, it will just run the way the containers has to run. So there is obviously advantage of running as a container instance here. So let us wait for this to come up. Um, taking a bit of time. While this comes up, I'll just want to spend some time here. So I have done an end-to-end Kubernetes 101 talk, and it's available on my channel. And if you go to um, if you go to the Bitly and Bytes, you will be able to see end-to-end understanding of Kubernetes. I've done the talk from the architecture perspective, and also how to create a Kubernetes cluster and how to deploy an application there. I've also deployed an application onto this Kubernetes cluster. So if you want to learn Kubernetes and understand how it exactly helps in running multi-container and how to orchestrate it, probably this is where you get started, which I feel almost explaining everything which is written there. So let me go back again and see. This has come up. Okay, so yeah, there is no code. This is just a Nginx which we did. So there is one simple um, application which we have deployed. So this is how you can deploy it. I'm not used CLI or PowerShell. That is an exercise for you. Go back and see how you can use CLI and PowerShell to deploy stuff. So for Kubernetes as well, it's very simple. Go and create a resource, and you will see Kubernetes service. Just click on Kubernetes service, and you will be able to deploy. Simple way you can provide your informations which is required and choose the right set of size and nodes, and you'll be able to easily deploy a cluster. So that's how you can use different compute in as a developer. How you can host an application in Azure. There are different set of computes which is available, and you should just go back and see what are the different computes. I'm going to go deep dive into one of the compute which is the serverless in my next session, where we want to learn about serverless, why serverless, how it exactly fits in, and we'll also deploy a code through Visual Studio and see how exactly it goes into it. And also we will see how DevOps fits into it, deploying an application via the Azure DevOps pipeline, right? How it works as a whole, right? Um, so I just want to give you this link so that you can go back and learn Kubernetes service. Before I leave it everything, whatever I have discussed now and more is available in this link. Everything is on GitHub. Even the slide is on the GitHub. Not specifically these slides, but there is our developer advocates have built specific slides for Azure for developers, and you can actually find everything in this specific link. Don't forget to go there because you get everything there. And then please join and contribute to our newsletter. We have something called as Microsoft .source, which is a developer specific newsletter, and you can actually contribute. Just send me if you've written a blog or anything. Just tweet and add me there, or in LinkedIn, just send me a message, and if I'll put it as a nomination, and if it gets selected, it gets selected for our newsletter as well. So which is a very developer focused and very difficult to get your blogs onto those newsletter. And by the way, all the people who are contributing to Azure Dev stories and top selects will be published in this newsletter. Okay. Okay, thank you.